Would you watch a show where a billionaire CEO has to go an entire month on their lowest paid employee's salary without access to any other resources than that of the employee? What do you think would happen? There was this similar themed show in Hong Kong and mainland China years ago. They swapped billionaire with bottom feeders, let the rich do the basic job on the lowest salary to see how far the rich could go by purely their own effort. Nearly all of the billionaire admitted that they could not make anywhere, regardless of how hard they worked. Even working without sleeping and resting could not give you any accumulation to help climb up to the higher level of the society. There was only despair and admission that the divide between the poor and the rich is already a deep valley, and mere personal effort makes little sense. It stirred big debate among the society back then, and I think that was part of the reasons the show got cancelled. There was also another show in China, swapping senior political figures with community-level council workers to see how good they could do in each other's posts. The mayors were flooded by the angry mobs who kept asking for more and more benefits that were impossible to fulfill. By the end, had to admit the amount of work at basic community level was too much to archive anywhere. The show also got cancelled quite soon after a few episodes. Lol, I love that. Instead of affecting change, they just swept the problem under the rug, never to be seen again. Never change, plutocrats. Anyone remember The Simple Life with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie? The show was supposed to be a, let's watch these rich people work on a farm or minimum wage jobs like serving fast food and see how they like it. These spoiled brats would do a few minutes of work, whine about it, and then just screw around because they didn't give a shit about getting fired or not. All it did was give these spoiled rich people more attention that they didn't deserve. I'm pretty sure the target market was people that wanted to ogle at the girls. They were like the last people you'd pick if you wanted a show like that to present the topic seriously. If anything, it almost implied justification for the rich-poor divide. It implied being poor made you a better person than a rich person, which is neither true or helpful. Edit. Just to clarify, I'm not saying being rich makes you better either, just that it's, at least mostly, independent of your financial status. In my experience, the people who actually made the money are often pretty good people. Flawed, as we all are, but fundamentally decent. They're kids though, holy shit. It's more than just the money. It's the lack of security these people endure. Not knowing if you'll lose your job tomorrow and having no savings. Being kicked out of your home. An unexpected bill you can't afford, which may lead to increasing debt. Putting these rich people in a poor lifestyle for a month isn't enough. Even if they lost their money and homes, they'll have such a huge network that they'll be back on their feet in the time it takes for us peons to earn enough to eat for a week. They can never truly understand what it's like to be poor or ever face that reality again. So what would happen? It'd be a completely self-serving advert about how now I realize that we need to do more for our employees. The workers get a small vanity bonus, probably give an immigrant worker with limited English a car, pat themselves on the back. Then 2 weeks later, we've all forgotten about the show, and they'll go back to their old ways. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend The Act of Killing. It's a documentary following an elderly man who was once a member of a government-sanctioned anti-communist death squad in Indonesia. Now, the commies are defeated, he's celebrated in his own country. There's a scene where they had him do a mock-up of a torture execution method he had used. He asked production to hold because he found it traumatic. In a very raw moment, he asks the question, is this what my victims were feeling in their last moments? The producer responds, no, what your victims were feeling was much worse because you were able to ask us to stop and they knew there was no escape. You can see in a couple of seconds it changes the guy's whole worldview. I would imagine a billionaire who has been rich for most or all of their adult life, equally, would have trouble conceiving of the dread of inescapable poverty. You forgot the depressing part where he is the only one to have any sort of realization like that. The other guys had no such realization, or maybe they had one years ago and didn't care. People find ways to justify their actions. It's a defense mechanism of sorts that protects them from reality. I imagine that's the only way torturers live with themselves. They're doing the right thing in their own twisted worldview. It would be incredibly self-serving and boring. They would never truly experience what it is like to be in the precarious position of a minimum wage employee living hand to mouth, and the novelty is just salt in the wound. It would be more interesting to see the reverse. Lots of rich people voluntarily go on vacation to third world countries. The catch is, they know they have a way out and an end date. I'd be interested to watch a show where the CEO had to personally be financially responsible for the welfare of 50% of their lowest paid employees for 10 years, and their net growth percentage equaled their bonus every year, with a big bonus if both the company and the employees were profitable at the end. I'd do more than a month and without any contact to rich buddies either. If it's a month, I think a lot would just buy rice and beans every day and go see. It's super easy to be poor. You just need to make economical choices. I've proven myself right. Longer than that and they'll really have to get used to how their lowest paid employees live. Would they learn a lesson? Maybe. Likely not. They still have a mansion to come back home to. They'll give their lowest paid people a one-time bonus, or maybe they'll drag one out in front of a camera to give them a fancy car so their own reputation gets better. And then they won't change anything else. They would just treat it as a novelty since they know they will be getting their billions back at the end of the month. They wouldn't have to truly live like a person does who lives hand to mouth every day of their lives. They wouldn't really learn anything from it. In fact, they would probably look back on it and laugh. Oh, remember when we had to eat that can of ravioli, hahaha. There was an episode of American Dad where they tried to live on minimum wage for a month. It was fantastic. I think a lot of people would realize the exact opposite of what they think will happen. They will realize how resourceful, intelligent, and motivated they are at managing their situation in order to come out ahead. This definitely grabs people's attention because they probably scoff at rich people thinking how easy their life must be with money and how lazy or unmotivated they are. So working a 9-to-5 out a show real struggle. But a lot of these people who amassed large fortunes aren't as moronic, lazy, or ignorant as people would love to believe. They would have to swap everything down to the last detail. Apartment, car, if they even have one, wardrobe, food, hobbies, etc. And it would have to be ongoing, not just a couple months. The real question is, how to get a CEO to agree to this? No, I wouldn't want it. I think it would be boring. A lot of people seem to think that all billionaire CEOs just lucked their way into their fortunes. In reality, the majority of them started as hungry and broke college students with a dream, living frugally. They made sacrifices to achieve their goals. That being said, there is some luck involved. There are a lot of great business people who don't make it, as the markets are flooded with people bringing new ideas and products to the masses. Only so many can catch fire and survive, let alone be mega successful. I say it would be boring because I believe these billionaire CEOs would adapt to their situation and be just fine. They only make minimum wage now? Well, they would live a minimum wage lifestyle and likely do it better than most people, living cheap and saving money to get themselves out of the situation, as that kind of attitude and determination is what got a large portion of them into their current situation as it is. Of course, some people were born into money, and you could say that a large portion of the world's wealthy are so due to their family money, but when it comes to starting and building a company and becoming a billionaire as CEO, it's simply not the case in the majority. As Jarvis Cocker said, but still you'll never get it right cause when you're late in bed at night, watching roaches climb the wall, if you called your dad, he could stop it all. Yeah, you'll never live like common people, even in a miracle situation where a show like this wasn't obviously rigged and legitimately did have the CEO go for a month on a low salary without any support. They'd still know at the back of their mind they can walk away anytime. This would make the poor situation there impossible to cope with, as they know for a fact there's an exit to the misery, which on screen would translate to them happily getting on with it and the perception that it isn't so bad for the common worker. The only way it would really work is if you trick the CEO into really believing they'd lost their entire fortune. Then you'd see them totally fall apart. Yeah, actually. You'd have to get medieval making sure they don't cheat. You could go to companies and swap their worst and best paid employees round. What would happen? A lot of them would die. They would be swapping places with someone who lives in a very different part of town, and they would stick out like a billionaire in Compton. They would be surprised to discover how little time they have left once they have to commute, possibly get the kids from school, shop, cook, tidy up, etc. I think some would discover they like having neighbors. They would all talk about raising the wages of the least well-paid, then none of them would actually do it. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss a video. Like, comment and subscribe if you're new here. More great Reddit content coming soon.